out to be true, but if you've got more, we can definitely talk about them.
It turned out to be true. There's not really a whole bunch of them. I mean, the one I was talking about earlier was the whole Lower Verde one in Brazil that we talked about before, which, I mean, in 1923, the whole village of 600 people just straight up vanished. They were gone. People in surrounding towns were like, well, it's kind of weird that these people aren't coming through and trading and, buying stuff and whatnot. So they went into town, and, I mean, just nobody was there. The only evidence that was left behind was in a school there. There was a bullet or a gun that had been fired once. And on the chalkboard, it was written, there is no salvation, which in, I don't know if that was Portuguese or a Spanish part of Brazil, but it was, it didn't have really meaning like it does in English. Like it was kind of worded weird for that. But there's a whole slew of things behind that, like, aliens. That's a whole big conspiracy theory there. Brazil was also was in a lot of political unrest around that time, and there's a lot of thugs. I mean, kind of like what Mexico has been going through for the past few years with the cartels and all that. And they think that, I don't see how, but some people think that, this band of thugs came through and cleared out 600 people. But the whole problem with that is that when people are displaced, they show up somewhere else, and there is no huge influx of people anywhere else that was reported. But of course, this was back in 23, so there weren't as many reports.
Right? Yeah, they probably didn't have. No, I wouldn't think that they had like a really efficient census system in Brazil back in 23.
Right. Yeah, I mean, what was real weird is that there was another incident that happened like that, and I don't really have a time frame because I just kind of read about this one time a while ago and haven't really thought about it a whole lot since. But up in Alaska, or maybe it was Canada, northern Canada somewhere, there's a whole village of native people there that just up and went missing, which people might think, oh, well, that's not all that weird, but because they move, they go places. But the weird thing about what made this real weird is that the bones of their ancestors, I mean, they've been on this land for a while. The bones of their ancestors had been dug up and were no longer there, and all their dogs were dead.
Yeah, I think I heard about that one. I think I came across it when I was looking at something else, and I just kind of stuck it in the back of my mind, like, oh, I ought to come back to that. But, here's one that I was just found scrolling through the internet. Have you ever heard of Operation Snow White? Apparently, sometime during the 1970s, the Church of Scientology decided to infiltrate the United States government. And they actually managed to perform the largest infiltration of the government in history. 5,000 of Scientology's, says here, 5,000 of Scientology's crack commandos wiretapped and burglarized various agencies, stole hundreds of documents, mainly from the IRS. And in the end, 136 organizations, agencies, and foreign embassies were infiltrated. And that's, why would the Church of Scientology do that?
Reptilians.
Reptilians, absolutely.
Yeah. I don't know what they were really
I know. I think maybe that was maybe an anti-smear campaign. I know since the Church of Scientology has popped up, they haven't been very popular, and I know a lot of people claim that they're a cult or really like a pyramid scheme where they get you in and they take all your money and then they brainwash you, but nobody really knows because the only way to find out is to go in, and then once you're in, you don't really come back out. So I mean, now that I think about it, maybe that's a show.
Yeah. I mean, Tom Cruise has been said to be.
Oh yeah, he definitely is, and I think he's got to be like the most famous member of the church, And actually, his wife left him not too long ago, from what I understand, because in the church, it's, I guess, customary that once once your kids turn a certain age, they basically take them away from you and send them to someplace else. And
Oh wow, I never
and
heard
she didn't
that.
want any
That's
part of that, and basically took the kid and split. I mean, I don't know for sure, because I don't actually know anybody in the church, and as far as I know, they're pretty secretive about what they do. But I mean, we do know for a fact that they did split, and she did take the kid and run. But
yeah,
that's what they're saying happened. And I mean,
yeah. That sounds pretty culty to
yeah,
me.
yeah. I mean, you can look on the internet and find websites built by people who were once in the church, and they're saying all this crazy stuff that happens, and basically once you're in, you don't have any say over your own life.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, we've actually seen recently a lot of resurgence in a lot of conspiracy theories. Like a big one that's in the news right now is the JFK assassination.
Oh yeah, yeah, that one. I
We got to get into its own
Yeah,
show
the
for that one.
JFK assassination gets its own show for sure. Same with stuff like the New World Order. That's got to have its own show. Secret societies and stuff like that.
Right. But I mean, that one, I haven't actually clicked on any of the links on Reddit I've seen with that one, but I have seen that that's been back in
Oh
the
yeah.
news.
The the thing about the JFK assassination, I think, is there's a couple books that actually have been coming out recently. I know. Oh, was it a year or so ago? Bill O'Reilly wrote a book um, about the Kennedy assassination, and I know a lot of people aren't into Bill O'Reilly, but he did write a book, and it was factually accurate, and I guess it detailed all the stuff that led up to the assassination, and from what I gather, it's actually very good and very close to the truth, or at least the accepted truth. But on the other hand, there's a couple books that also came out dealing more with the conspiracy side of it. So, and then they just made a movie also starring Rob Lowe as JFK. So, I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, I think with that stuff coming up, the theories also kind of have to come back with it. It's they're hand in hand.
Yeah, and I like how that one's one of the biggest ones that we've had. I mean, since it came up, I mean, it's been all throughout film, all throughout books. I mean, if you remember the movie Shooter back in the, I don't even know when that came out with Mark Wahlberg. I mean, they even have a reference to, when he's talking to that old guy, he says that he dug the grave for the guys on the grassy knoll.
Right?
You know,
Yeah.
I mean, there's definitely been a resurgence in a bunch of different things. I don't know if it's just because I'm online more than I was a year or two ago, or if this stuff's actually coming up a
I
lot
know
more.
I've been hearing about it because I listen to Coast AM like every day at work. I'll record the show at night while I sleep, and then load it onto my iPod. And then my day job is very it's a it's a physical job, so it doesn't take a whole lot of brain power. So if I'm not listening to
Right.
something, then I get really bored. So for the first couple hours of the day, I've got Coast to Coast AM, and I know that's been a topic that's been popping up on there a lot lately.
Yeah, I haven't listened to New Coast to Coast. My aunt, who she actually died in like 2006, but I remember listening to Coast to Coast with Art Bell back when I was
Yeah,
little.
yeah.
Just hearing about all this different stuff, and I think that's actually honestly what started me in this whole paranormal
Well,
stuff.
he's back on the air, except I think he's got a show on XM now.
Yeah, he was on Dark Matter, but he just recently left that
Right.
show because as Sirius or whoever he wanted to live stream the show
Yeah.
pretty much on his website for free, and they're like, we're making a whole bunch of money out of this. How about not? And so apparently he
Yeah. No,
quit. But there's I mean, I guess many conspiracy theory within all that the new host of Coast to Coast had a little bit of play in that, and apparently he's been kind of slandering Art Bell or something. I don't
Really?
know. I
I
don't
haven't
listen
heard that one.
to
I,
Yeah, I mean, I haven't listened to the new Coast to Coast host ever, but I mean that's just what I've heard on, on the subreddit that I moderate, Want to Believe. People talk back and
right.
forth about
I
that.
guess that would have to be behind the scenes type stuff because, I mean, anytime anybody mentions Art Bell actually on the show, George Norrie, who's the host, he always had, or he's the host, he always has, like, really good things to say about art. So, I mean,
Yeah,
if there was anything like that, I guess that would have to be, behind the scenes. I guess any show or anything like that would have to have some, I guess, some sort of competition or drama or something behind the scenes. I mean, most places do, most work environments. So, I mean, everywhere you go, you're going to find that. But
yeah. I mean, even when he came back with Dark Matter, I didn't really listen to it. I listened to the Halloween one, but that was it. That was the only one I actually listened to. But it seemed like he was real big on talking about conspiracy theories too. From what I remember when I listened to it, like the whole Mel's Hole and the whole big classic
right,
ones.
right.
Roswell, that's one of the biggest conspiracy theories in American
Oh,
history.
absolutely. And when I first started thinking about doing this podcast, I decided that I was going to do a promo for like what I like to call the big three, which is like aliens, ghosts, and cryptids. And I actually recorded a
Right.
promo for aliens, and it covered a lot of the Roswell stuff just in this quick little promo that I recorded. And I think that one actually accidentally made it into the iTunes list. So if anybody goes to iTunes, they can find it there. But yeah, the plan was to record three of them, and I only recorded the one, and then I actually started doing the actual podcast, and I thought, yeah, I don't really think I need any promos. But yeah,
Yeah.
the first one it covers a good chunk of the Roswell stuff and Jesse Marcel and a lot of a lot of
Yeah.
basic. It was just basically the alien promo, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the whole Roswell thing with all the grades and all that. I mean, I don't think that no matter. I think that no matter how much the government comes out and says, okay, we're going to declassify this stuff with Area 51, all right, that was a weather balloon. I don't think that any of that's going to deter people from, unless they come on and say, okay, yeah, this actually happened.
Right.
I don't think that anybody's, I don't think that it's ever going to stop being prevalent in American history that, people think that aliens crashed into Roswell, New
Right. Well,
Mexico.
that was the first big one. I mean, it's definitely not the first recorded one or reported one, but
Right.
I mean that was I guess you would call that the catalyst. I mean that
Yeah. I mean, that's what got a lot of people
yeah that
interested in it.
exploded the UFO thing, and even then, I mean it after after the newspapers kind of brushed that one away, it just disappeared for like 30 years until Jesse Marcel, the guy who was originally involved with gathering up the debris, he came out and actually did an interview, and that just kind of sparked worldwide interest in it again and kind of brought it back to the front of people's minds, and then it really started taking off from there.
Right. I think we should do a show on alien life here soon, or especially the whole everything about it, like Men in Black
Oh
and all
yeah,
that.
yeah, definitely. Um, I'm actually I'm still putting together stuff for the Myths and Legends show. Um, I'm not sure exactly how much I want to throw into one show because I mean it seems like the more we it doesn't seem like a whole lot on paper when I'm putting it all my ideas down, but then when we actually start going with it, it goes on forever, and
Yeah.
we end up
I
having
mean,
to cut a lot of stuff out just for time.
yeah. I mean, that's something too that if we did get into that, we could do it, split it up over 3 or 4 shows, and like not have them sequentially.
Right.
Just do do a little bit for one, maybe focus on like the Midwest for one, and then 2 or 3 shows later do like Northeast or the Southern
Well,
ones.
that's kind of what I tried to do with this show, because the last show we took a whole bunch of NASA stuff and we touched on a little bit here and there, but we couldn't really go in depth into it. And I know some people were asking like, well, where's the details? And we didn't exactly give any details on anything because we were just trying to cover so much. So that's why I said this time, let's just each pick 2, and we'll be able to do a little bit more with that. And I think that worked out a little better. I mean, this is only going to be episode 5, so there's still a whole lot of room for evolution as far as the way the show works.
Yeah, I've noticed too, that more and more podcasts have been popping up.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So I don't know if that's anything to do with with this one, just kind of inspiring people. But I know on ours, on my subreddit, there's been people who come through and posted their own and all that.
I think I'd like to think that, but I honestly I can't say that mine's had anything to do with anything at all. But that would be nice.
Well, I mean, on my subreddit, the one I moderate, we post a lot of podcasts there. I mean, like all the time. A lot of it ends up being coast to coast and stuff like that. But I think that now that people see, we can get on and talk about it. And me and you have done it, and these people are putting up all these podcasts. I think more and more people are wanting to go there. I mean, that's what I see.
Well, just now, let me go ahead and extend an invitation to anybody who, if they want to be a part of something like that, but they don't want to like do their own podcast, as long as they've got something interesting to say, I am not against, inviting somebody on to say something interesting.
Right.
So,
right.
I mean, when I first started this, the whole idea of collecting stories from people is that I kind of wanted the people who are going to listen to it to help shape what happens on the show. So, I mean, that's kind of why I collect stories from people, just, I mean, the first time I had you on, it was because you had a whole lot of ghost stories, and I was like, that's awesome, I'm going to do a whole show like that. And then, I mean, look where that went. Now you're a regular fixture now.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you want to drop it yet, but would you want to talk about what we're talking about going into doing, or what we talked about going into doing that way?
Yeah, actually, I want to do 2 things. I'm going to do a little shameless plug while we're here. I want to see if I can get some more people on the Facebook page, because I know we've got like over 400 hits on the last episode of the podcast, and I mean, it hit like 200 hits in under 24 hours. So
yeah,
I mean, I know people are going, and I always add all the extra contact information at the end of the podcast and whatnot. And I always say, if you go to the blog spot, or the blog page, which is wotb.blogspot.com, on the left-hand side of the page, you'll see all these links for this and that and whatever. And I always ask people, go ahead and like the Facebook page. And it's been stuck on, I think, 12 likes since I really started going. So I mean, we've got so many people coming to actual blog page. I just like to encourage them that while you're there, on the left-hand side of the page, click the Facebook link, and just when it takes you to Facebook, just click the like button for me, and that'll get us some more. What's the word I'm looking for? Exposure. That'll get us some more exposure and visibility, and that'll. I think the more people we have listening, the more people will interact, and the better the show will get. So that's kind of half shameless plug, and I don't know, maybe half cry for help.
Yeah. Well, when I listen to it, I usually get onto I usually do it through mobile and just listen to it on my truck on my way to work.
Let's go ahead and we'll jump ahead to the thing we were going to talk about, though. In the future, if we can get enough interest in it, I'd like to I'd like to put on a live show. Maybe, I don't know, I was thinking somewhere around every 10th episode or so could be a live show, and that would give us plenty of time to generate interest and really get people ready, get involved, get something to talk about, and make sure anybody who wants to be involved is going to be able to arrange their schedule, and we can do a show when everybody can be there. But
Right.
so I mean, right now I'm looking at a couple things, and it looks like I'm settling on the website TalkShoe, and so when we do the live show, I mean, basically it would have to be an open lines type of thing where you can call in with your phone. I think you can call in with Skype, and I think we can have like up to 200 callers at a time. I don't think we're going to have to go that far, but I mean, thousands can listen and like hundreds can call in. So I mean, that's something I'd like to do if we can generate enough interest. Otherwise, we'll end up sitting there talking to ourselves, and that would be less than fun. I mean, that's what
Yeah.
we do now. Doing it live
Yeah,
would
but
be, I don't know, it would be feel like a waste, I guess.
I don't know. I think some people might like to hear, the little sidetracks that we get on sometimes. That sometimes get edited out
Right.
live.
Yeah, I know a lot of the extra talking we do, I usually end up trimming it out just
Yeah.
just for time. But yeah, if anybody's interested in something like that.
We were talking a little bit before about, my first show with the paranormal stuff, and actually, I was just on the paranormal subreddit um, earlier this week talking about something that happened to me like 6 years ago that apparently is a pretty big phenomenon that people like all over the world have experienced. Um, this was about 6 years ago. I was 14. I just turned 20. I was in my living room, and the way my living room was set up, you could see there's like an entryway into the dining room. Then like directly across from that on the other side of the dining room was another entryway into the kitchen. So if you stood in the living room, you could see all the way back to the back door, back by the
Mm.
kitchen. But I was walking from one side of my living room to the other, and I looked down there and standing in front of my fridge, and this had to have been a good foot taller than my fridge, was this man in a like old style 3-piece suit with a trench coat on and a wide brimmed hat, like almost like a cowboy hat, I would say. And it was so weird to me. Like I looked at it and didn't think anything of it. I was like, oh, and just kept on going across the room to get my phone charger. And then as soon as I grabbed my charger, I was like, oh my, is somebody in the house? So I went back and I went through and checked all the doors and all of that, and there's nobody there. Told, I think, my dad about it. He was like, stop watching so much TV or whatever. and I pretty much just put it on the back burner. I never really thought about it very much. And then I read something probably about a month ago. It was in the comments section on Reddit about a guy who saw the exact same thing. And then I think a week ago, I saw another comment. So I posted my own thing, gave my own experience. I think I got like 21 comments. I think probably 15 of them were people who had seen something similar. And I Googled it, just Google Hat Man. Apparently this came up on Coast to Coast a few years ago, and it's actually a thing that some people see.
Yeah, I have heard of that. I think first time I heard about it, it popped up in a conversation with Shadow Men, and they're like,
Yeah,
"Oh, Hat Man too," and I was like, "I don't even know what that is." But yeah, the more you look into it, the more you find, and it's it's kind of interesting. But I've never actually met anybody that's had an experience with it before. But I mean, most of the experiences that you do hear are well, it's kind of a not a pleasant experience. I mean, I heard of one where where the Hat Man, I guess, was saying some really evil stuff to a little kid, and that seems to be the common theme. It's just it's never a good experience when you see one.
Actually, from what I saw, on the contrary, it's actually more of a benign thing. You know, I mean, I guess it depends. Actually, what you said is something I'd attribute to something completely different. I'll actually tell you about here in a second. But the Hat Man, from what I've seen, is actually something that, just from what I heard, just stands there and looks at you. And every so often you'll hear about him tipping his hat or whatever. Oh yeah, what happened after that was kind of weird to me. That house had been one of the only houses I've ever
Mm-hmm.
lived in that didn't have anything going on in it. I was like, well, this is pretty nice. I'm having to deal with that. Probably about a week or two after that happened, I'd be laying there falling asleep, and people, attribute this to something where you hear something going into sleep, but this happened to me every single night and woke me straight up every single time. I'd be laying there in bed, and it'd be a different voice every night. Would be almost like it was right next to my ear, and they would say my name really, really
Oh,
loud, right in my
I've
ear.
actually I've had something like that where you almost hear it right in your head, but
Yeah,
it's nothing there. And I always just thought that was
right.
something that like a trick of the ear, something that happens to everybody. But I've never like asked anybody else if it ever happens. But I mean, it's almost
Right.
like it comes from right beside you, but at the same time, it comes from inside.
Yeah, no, this was definitely external because a couple of times I thought it was a relative or someone that was in my room trying to get my
Mm.
attention. Um, but I mean, if it was once or twice, I remember the first few times I was like, oh, it was a dream, whatever. But then it kept happening and happening and happening. And, at different points I see shadow people in that house. And one time, this was towards the end of this whole, this happened for about a year where all this stuff would happen. And this was towards the end of it. I don't know if you've ever been, if you're a single child or not, if you've ever been on a bunk bed, every once in a while the person underneath you will kick
Yeah,
the
yeah.
mattress, and you'll feel a bump up. Well, I was laying on my queen size bed. It was a pretty big bed laying there, and it felt like somebody from underneath me kicked. I mean, there's a whole 6 inches of room under there, kicked up on the box springs and the mattress, and and for whatever reason, it didn't bother me. It didn't scare me. I sat up. I was like, well, what was that? Then I lay back down and went back to sleep. And I think with things like that, the less you show a fear, the less it comes back. And that was pretty much the end of all
Right,
that.
right.
What you were saying about it talking to, saying bad things
Yeah,
to
yeah.
people.
Almost like kind of gives them a feeling of like a feeling of dread. I guess it changes for everybody, but it says some pretty nasty things to some people. I don't know if that's the same thing or not.
What I've heard is along the same lines as the Hat Man, that big dark entity like that.
Right.
And this is coming secondhand from my dad. My dad heard it from an older man who was, into all that kind of stuff. But basically, and you might have heard of this before, as you hit puberty, you'll be visited by one of two entities. You'll either be visited by the old hag or by the devil. And the old hag is, I mean, I hear stories about this a lot too, where, somebody's 12, 13 years old will be woken by a woman on top of them screaming or, all
Mm.
that kind of stuff. Now the devil, on the other hand, and that happens once. The old hag happens once. The devil, on the other hand, is supposed to stay with you. And what happens with that um, is you'll wake up and he'll be standing at the foot of your bed, and you can't really tell what he is. But all you see is this really dark figure, and he'll start talking to you. And they say after that, he'll always be in your
Hmm.
head.
I don't remember having either of those things happen. What is what's that
Yeah.
supposed to mean?
Well, I'll tell you something weird. When I was about 12, when a whole bunch of stuff started happening to me really regularly, I was sleeping in my grandparents' basement. Um, my aunt had a bedroom down there and all that. And this is the only place it's ever happened to me. But I'm sure you've heard of
Oh
sleep
yeah, yeah.
paralysis. For an entire week straight, I would wake up probably about 7 o'clock in the morning and couldn't move. I'm just laying there, I'm conscious. I wouldn't feel like I was alone. I felt like there was somebody around me, and it kind of freaked me out. And then what always happened was I had my alarm set for 7:15 every day, and I would just lay there, and I would just try to wait it out because as soon as my alarm went off, I would snap out of
Hmm.
it. But that happened for an entire week straight. I mean, right around that time. But I never really had anything like that
And
happened to me.
could you speak or anything?
Nope, couldn't even open my eyes. I tried so hard the first day or two to try to open my
Wow,
eyes, and by the end of the week, I was like, yeah, I just kind of got used to it.
that's weird.
Yeah, but I mean, I've experienced a couple different things down there in that basement, so there's a whole lot to that
So you think
story
that's
there.
something that's actually just associated with that basement?
I don't know. I mean, it's that basement is the only place where I'll do some weird stuff in my sleep. Like the only time I've ever slept walk is when I was in that basement. The only time I've ever had sleep paralysis was in that basement. From what I hear, I talk a lot in my sleep when I'm down there. I mean, I just stopped sleeping down there eventually. I remember one time I was sleeping down there and I woke up in a completely different room. I woke up upstairs on the couch or in somebody's bed. I don't remember. And I was like, wow, how did I get up here? And apparently they said I just got up in the middle of the night, didn't turn on any lights, and just walked upstairs.
Wow.
That's where I grew up pretty much. So there's a whole lot of stories
Hmm.
there.
I know I've yeah, I've never actually had anything paranormal or supernatural or really I've never had any real experiences like that. And actually the only thing that's ever happened is when we went on vacation and we were at the Talbot Tavern in Bardstown, Kentucky, and I saw that glass move across the table. I think I told you about it. And
Yeah.
I told the story in the YouTube video I put up. But yeah, that was like the first thing I'd actually ever witnessed that I felt comfortable calling a paranormal experience. I mean, before that, I didn't really, I can't pick out one thing that I could say, oh, well, that was a ghost or, I saw a UFO or, nothing like that up until this year. So,
Well, I'd have to say that, me dealing with paranormal for pretty much my entire life, it varies person to person. Like my dad will see stuff all the time. I mean, not like all the time, but he'll see stuff. For me personally, I hear stuff more. Yeah, I can count on one hand the number of times I've actually seen something. I mean, like I mean, kind of a broad statement. I mean, I've seen the same thing in the same area multiple times, but I mean, I count that as
right,
one thing.
right.
But like that'd be one. When I was little, I saw something in the closet of my room that actually I thought was my imagination until years later when my little brother saw the exact same thing, who was also sleeping in that room. And when I was little in that same basement, I saw a shadow walk across the wall, and I've seen shadow people, on and off. And then the one I talked to you about when we did our ghost one, when I saw that little girl walking by my
Yeah,
dad.
yeah.
That's about the only things I've ever actually seen in person, that didn't show up on film later or,
Right.
whatever.
Yeah, the I don't know. Sometimes I think when I hear stories like that, I think I feel a little jealous. But then on the other hand, well, I mean, some of the stuff is kind of frightening. So maybe it's a good thing I don't get to see the
Yeah.
stuff. But I mean, I have to say I am a little bit jealous when somebody comes up with a really good experience. I'd be like, oh, you're so lucky. But you know,
Yeah,
and maybe the person telling me isn't so doesn't think that though.
yeah. I mean, a lot of stuff is scary at first. Like, my name getting called, I was like, wow, that's freaked me out. But you kind of get
Yeah.
used to it after a while. And, at a certain point, there's not a whole lot that really scares
Right.
you too
Well,
bad.
it's like the people who claim to have multiple contact with like extraterrestrials or other beings. And like I've spent I spent a whole lot of time, just looking up, and I didn't see anything. And now you know, here's somebody who's just along, goes through their daily life, doesn't give a second thought, and boom, they get contacted multiple times.
I've actually seen two things in my entire lifetime that I think might be might be extraterrestrial. When I was younger, I mean, I was living in my grandma's house and we were kind of tight on space, so I was sleeping in my mom's bed, which was pressed up against the wall. And I remember waking up. It was really strange to me. I just like woke up in the middle of the night and got this feeling I should go look out the window. So I crawled over and, peeked through the blinds and looked up, and it was like a string of multicolored dots, pretty much, way up in the sky. And I was like, wow, that's weird. So I, went back to bed, and the next night the same thing happened. I got up, looked out, and there they were again. This happened for like 2 weeks straight. I remember bringing it up to my grandpa at one point, and he was like, oh, it's water vapor or something. I was like, yeah, I don't know. It's been there. Yeah. And then the second, I was young at that point too, so it could have been something that if I saw it now, I'd be like, oh, that's such and such. But the second thing that happened actually happened earlier this year, and I was kind of surprised to see that more people have talked about this since. It was right before I moved up here, and I moved up here in mid-March. So this had to have been in probably February. I was driving from, Columbus, Ohio up to Cleveland, Ohio. Maybe it's familiar with that area, 71 North, just past Polaris. After you get past Polaris and Mount Gilead and all that, it's pretty open road all the way up into Mansfield. We were just a little ways out of where anything was. And in Futurama in the very beginning, where that big blue flash comes out and kind of goes out.
Yeah.
It was like that, only bright green and way off to the right. I just saw it come down out of the sky, flash, and it was gone. And that's only happened to me once, and I heard about somebody up in Michigan seeing it, and I heard about somebody here in Cleveland also seeing it.
Do you think extraterrestrial experience and like ghost experiences, do you think they might be somehow connected or related to each other?
Not really, because I've heard about a lot of people who have seen a lot of ghosts and never seen any kind of extraterrestrial anything. I think that honestly, me and my buddy both were in the truck. It was late at night. I used to work at UPS in Columbus, and we both worked there. He was my roommate for a little while, and we both saw it. So there's that. But his first time ever seeing any ghosts was with me. So I don't know if it attracts to certain people or if one thing attracts to certain people and the other one doesn't or what. There's actually, because he was running into some family trouble, so I let him move in with me and my parents, or my mom. And I think the first time he ever saw a ghost was in the basement that we were living in. There was an old guy, I remember waking up and seeing him. It was an old guy. And this is different than the Hat Man completely, but there's an older, gentleman with a nice mustache, and he was holding a cane and a very nice 3-piece suit and a bowler hat, standing in the corner just looking at me. I remember looking up and seeing him. He looked like a real person standing there, and I was like, huh. And then I went back to sleep. But he saw the same thing. We had those big cloth wardrobes that you would set up because it was like a finished basement or anything. And we would see shadows pass back and forth behind them from the light that was back there because we used them to kind of section off our room. That was pretty different. Yeah, if that's something you want to throw into your YouTube channel as like an exclusive,
You know what I think I'm going to do is I think I'm going to take probably like the whole last half of this and just kind of make a separate, like a side thing and just upload it sometime in between podcasts, just, kind of keep people going. But the Facebook page is facebook.com/WOTB show. And that'll take you right there. And then, currently I've got like 12 likes. But if anybody wants to stay really updated with the podcast, the best thing to do is to either bookmark the blog page, which is wotb.blogspot.com, or to like the Facebook page, because those are the two that I update the most. And I know I've got I've got a Twitter account listed there and stuff like that, but I hardly go to Twitter anymore. It's easier to just update the blog and update Facebook.
Hey, what I was saying before about screening calls is, I don't know if you've got, a wife or whatever, but you're some family member that I saw that you had a Google Voice line. What I was thinking is, not putting the number for the show out there, but having, people want to call that line and then have somebody listen to it, see if it's interesting enough, and then you're like, okay, yeah, that's pretty good. Pass it on to us. Give them the number to call and talk to us.
I think I think the only problem there is that when you actually go to tune into the live show, it actually, once you're there, it gives you basically the number to call into the show.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think there's any way to screen calls, but I'm still looking. So if there is, I mean, we probably figure out a way to make it happen. But the way it looks right now is we'll just have to take everything blind, and then just hope nobody says anything like vulgar or whatever.
I mean, it's not like we're on the radio either.
Right, but
I mean, we do have. I'm sure we have some younger listeners.
Right,
out there.
and pretty much everything we record goes up on iTunes, where I currently have a clean rating, and I'd like to keep my clean rating. It's just easier to promote if your podcast is clean.
I'm sure there's some kind of tolerance there too. I mean, same as on the radio, you can't really help. Live.
Yeah.
Or if you did it live and you put it on iTunes, can you go through before and
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, when you record it, as it's recording, or when it's done recording, it saves to an MP3. So you have you have an MP3 of the live show to work with. So I mean, if I have to go through and edit something out, I'd be able to. During the course of the show, I mean, we could probably have a topic, like a specific topic, or more likely just have people call in with pretty much anything paranormal that they want to talk about, and just kind of make sure everybody understands just basically the basic rules of etiquette. Don't come on being hateful, and don't come on talking, calling somebody else stupid for what they believe, just because I know there's a lot of people out there that if you say something they don't agree with, they get really, really upset. And like when we did the last show, somebody commented on the blog and said that I was nearly discrediting my own show by presenting the theory that the moon landing was faked. And my view is that if you've got a belief, you have just as much right to talk about it or have it presented as anybody else. It doesn't matter if I believe that the moon landing was faked or not. People out there believe it, so it goes in. I mean, it's actually got a pretty big following for that theory. So, I didn't have a problem throwing it in there. And then, on the other hand, though, and I didn't think about it until later, was, this guy saying basically that, it's crazy to think that the moon landing could have been faked, but if he would have listened a little farther into the show, we were also talking about teleporting people to Mars in 1970. So, I mean, it's not crazy to teleport somebody to Mars in the 1970s, but it's crazy to think that we couldn't film a moon landing on a soundstage in California.
This is kind of funny. We were talking about reptilians earlier. I was just on Want to Believe, and a new post there says Obama's reptilian SS agent, and it's a YouTube link. I haven't watched it yet. I usually don't watch YouTube videos on there, but I think it's funny. We were just talking about that, and actually, when we did the NASA cover-ups, another one of the moderators posted something like the day before about that guy that said he went to Mars.
Oh, really?
Video.
Oh, wow. I know there's
Or did it like the day that we posted, like right before we posted it.
I know when I was originally talking about that guy, one of the people he named was went by the name Arthur Neumann, and I was looking into that guy because I had actually got an email from somebody who I actually suspect was that guy, but the return email was a fake because he used the email form on the site. The information you give me doesn't have to be accurate. It just, if you give me your email address and I have any questions, I can, go back and forth. But basically what he did was he told me that my information on Arthur was wrong, because he is in no way associated with Andrew Basiago. And, so I started looking into this guy, and he says a lot of really interesting stuff that's pretty similar to what Basiago was saying, but also a little different. And, for a while I was doing little things on interesting people, and definitely when I do another one of those, I'm definitely going to do it on that guy. But I have a suspicion that it was him getting a hold of me, trying to correct me on information that was incorrect. So I think that was kind of cool. But if I could get a hold of him, or figure out how to get a hold of him again, I wouldn't mind doing an interview with that guy.
Yeah, that'd be
he's got a lot of really good stuff that he talks about.
Yeah, like the last two ones, or the last two shows we've done have been pretty much conspiracy.
Yeah. I thought about that when I was when I was putting stuff together for this one. I was like, is it a good idea to do two kind of similar shows back to back? I was like, well, I don't know. We'll see. I mean, we got a decent response out of the last show, though. So, I mean, I just don't want to, I don't want to beat the topic to death. But I figure, that one was really more NASA and space-based, and this one was more or less government-based. So, but we'll probably take a break for a show or two from conspiracies. And I really want to do the something on some myths and legends and stuff. And I know I've gotten a request to throw the Flatwoods Monster in there, so I got to look into that.
Flatwoods. And we got the Loveland Frog.
Oh yeah, the Loveland Frog. That's what, like 1 or 2 hours away from me. So.
Yeah. And there's a whole thing that they believe might have been the Loveland Frog, but people have different opinions on it, where something grabs a lady's leg and they all have a river that had red fingers.
Also talking about myths and legends and stuff, I spoke to a friend in Sweden and asked him if he had any insight on anything like that, and he said the only thing they have there is ghost stories from old people. I was like, well, maybe we'll come back to something like that. And then I talked to a friend in India. He said he would look into some stuff and see if he could find anything that would fit what we were looking for. So, and other than that, I mean, we've got there's plenty of stuff just here in the U.S. to work with, though. I mean, like Flatwoods Monster and the Loveland Frog, and if even we want to, we could do like Bigfoot or the Mothman, and then the Native American skinwalkers, and
well, I mean, even if we just did Midwest, our area, we got the Akron Grassman, which is a Bigfoot-like monster. We got Bessie, which is a lake monster that's supposed to be Lake Erie, even though Erie's only like 30 feet deep. And I mean, there's a Loveland Frog. There's a Melonheads.
Oh yeah, you were telling me about the Melonheads.
Yeah, which I think I'm gonna go and check that out here in the next couple of weeks. But there's all kinds of stuff. I mean, just in the Ohio, Kentucky area. I mean, Indiana, I've noticed is kind of lacking on.
Yeah,
stuff
I've lived close to different parts of Indiana pretty much throughout my entire life, and I've never heard of anything really coming out of Indiana. Ohio seems to have some. I want to say Michigan has a couple things, but
Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania's full.
Pennsylvania's got a. I don't know though. I mean, is that that could be something to do with maybe like the higher concentration of Amish there. I mean, like they stick to the older ways and maybe have some of the older stories that would have been forgotten.
I think a lot of it has to do with Pennsylvania having vast amounts of forests still. There's a lot of people hear a lot of stuff in the woods and blame it on
yeah.
things.
And what is it like over by Oregon and Washington with all that? It's just all that big that dense forest, and you get a lot of stories coming out of that area too.
I think if there was a Bigfoot anywhere, it'd be over in
Yeah,
that
that's what I'm
area.
thinking.
I mean, that Les Stroud Survivor Man has come out and said if it's anywhere, it's there. Because I mean, you can walk 20 miles into the woods, and it's not like people are out there hunting. You're the only person 20 in the next 20
Yeah.
miles.
Also, I wanted to look in for the myths and legends. I wanted to do some Central and South American stuff like Lechuza, and that's like supposed to be some monster that's associated with like a war god or something like that. And then La Llorona, which is like the crying lady, and she shows up in a lot of different cultures. Like I mean not just like South American culture or anything. I mean different countries around the world she shows up, and it's always like I guess she snatches up children, and the theory or the story behind it goes she had something to do with the death of her own children, and she's always crying, and then she steals children basically, and they're never seen again.
You ever seen Mama?
You know what? I haven't gotten a chance to see it, but it is on my list of things to see.
It's a movie that deals with something like that. And that's actually a really good
Is it?
movie. I liked it a lot. Kind of had a huge plot hole at the end of it, but I'm not going to ruin anything for you. But that's definitely on my list to watch. I mean, it's like any scary movie you in, you're like, shouldn't there be police involved at this
Right?
point?
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, especially now, it's like they have to go out of their way to disable cell phones and stuff. I mean, back in like in the 80s slasher movies, they were out in the middle of nowhere and there was no phones, and of course nobody had cell phones, so they were
Yeah.
they were it's just so much easier to just believe that they could be out there being slaughtered by a psycho or a ghost or a monster or whatever. And now it's like, well, I mean, everybody's got a cell phone, so why is nobody calling for
Yeah.
help?
I don't remember what they did in the new Friday the 13th movie, but I remember I liked that one
I
pretty
I don't
good.
think I've seen the new Friday the 13th movies.
I don't remember a whole lot about it. I just remember at one point somebody gets thrown out a window. I mean, it's like this guy that's trying to act all manly and he screams like a girl going down. Like a really high pitched scream was really funny. Well, we got a whole lot we can get into as far as I mean, like you said, the crying lady. I've heard about that in the Philippines and in
Right,
India.
yeah.
So I mean, that it's all over. I actually heard something similar in Japan, where this, if I remember right, it was just kind of a short Wikipedia article I read on it. But it's this woman who's wearing, one of those dust masks that they
Yeah,
wear over there a
yeah.
lot, pollution. And she'll approach a kid and she'll go, "Do you think I'm
Yeah, I've
pretty?"
heard about that one.
And if the yeah, you
Yeah,
heard
and if
about
they
it,
say
and
yes, she pulls down the mask and yeah, she's really hideous underneath her. Her face is split up or
or yeah, it's she's supposed to have been cut from like cheek to
yeah.
cheek. All right, well I'm gonna go get something to eat
All
here.
right. Yeah, I think wow, we're already way past an hour and a half, so we'll go ahead and cut this off and all right,
All
take
right,
it easy.
bye.